Chapter 16. The Mellows of Divine Connection. The particular loving mood or attitude relished in the exchange of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called rasa, or mellow. Nectar of Devotion, Chapter 20. One morning we were walking along a trail near my father's home, the autumn leaves crunching beneath our feet. "I have a confession to make," I said. "After everything we've discussed, the practices, the purification, Krishna's qualities, I still have this nagging question." "What is it?" he asked, not breaking stride. "What does the relationship actually look like? I mean, in practical terms. You keep talking about relationship with the Supreme, but that's so abstract. What does it mean to relate to God? What form does that take?" My father smiled and stopped walking. "That's exactly the right question. And it has a precise answer. Srila Prabhupada wrote that this theme, how to love Krishna in 5 different transcendental mellows, is the sum and substance of the nectar of devotion." 5 different ways? I asked. 5 primary relationships. Each one eternal, each one perfect, each one suited to different souls. But before we explore them, you need to understand what rasa means. Defining the eternal mellow. The term rasa, my father explained as we sat on a bench overlooking the valley, is often difficult to translate precisely. But in this context, it refers to the spiritual taste or loving mood relished in the exchange of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Taste, I repeated. Think about it this way. The fundamental basis of all life is the propensity to love someone. We are perpetually engaged in some sort of service, and the impetus for that service is the pleasure, the rasa, we derive from it. He paused, choosing his words carefully. When you teach yoga, what drives you? The pleasure of helping people, the satisfaction of watching them grow, the connection you feel. That's a form of rasa. But here's the problem. The rasa derived from mundane work seeking sense gratification immediately terminates along with your body when life is over. So it's temporary, I said. Exactly. But bhakti rasa, the mellow relished in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, does not finish with the end of life. Continues perpetually and is therefore called amrita, that which does not die but exists eternally. So these relationships are eternal? I asked. Not just eternal, they're who you really are. Core mission of the science of divine love is to stimulate our original love for Krishna, guiding us to repose our loving propensity in him. When one is thus engaged in devotional service, all varieties of rasa or mellows turn into eternity. This eternal loving service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure, making devotional life free from anxieties. The 5 primary relationships. My father pulled out a small notebook where he'd written something down. The living entity, being an eternal fragmental part of the Supreme, has the potential to renovate our relationship with Krishna in 5 primary mellows. He read them to me. Neutrality, Santarasa. Servitude, Dasya rasa. Fraternity, Sahya rasa. Parenthood, Vatsalya rasa. Conjugal love, Mother rasa. Wait, I interrupted. Conjugal love? With God? We'll get there, my father said with a knowing smile. Each one deserves its own exploration. These 5 relationships, alongside 7 other indirect relationships like comedy, compassion, fear, and anger, constitute 12 kinds of rasa. But these 5 primary ones are where the soul finds its eternal home. How do you know which one is yours? I asked. That's revealed through practice and grace. Some souls are naturally drawn to serve, others to friendship, others to protective love. But they all start at the same place, Santarasa, the neutral appreciation of the Supreme. Transcendence from liberation. Before we dive into Santarasa, my father said, we need to understand why these personal relationships far surpass any non-personal achievement, including what most spiritual seekers consider the ultimate goal, liberation. But isn't liberation what we achieved in Volume 2? I asked. We achieved internal liberation, freedom from material consciousness. But many spiritual traditions aim for something different, merging into the impersonal Brahman, the spiritual light. That's what they call mukti. Rejecting the Brahmananda. The happiness derived from identifying oneself with the impersonal Brahman is considered inferior because it's temporary. There is every chance of falling down from the spiritual happiness derived from identifying with the impersonal Brahman. How can you fall from spiritual happiness? I ask, skeptical. It happens all the time. Great impersonalists, despite being highly educated and almost self-realized, sometimes return to the material platform and engage in mundane activities like politics or social welfare. Why? Because they don't derive any ultimate transcendental happiness in the impersonal understanding. It's like achieving a state of pure silence, peaceful, yes, but ultimately unfulfilling. My father's voice took on conviction. Those engaged in pure devotional service deride even the conception of liberation. Bhakti rasa itself is sufficient to produce a feeling of liberation. Srila Rupa Goswami states that if Brahmananda, the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme, is multiplied by 1 trillion-fold, it still cannot compare to an atomic fraction of the happiness derived from the ocean of devotional service. That seems like hyperbole, I said. Does it? Prahlada Maharaja affirmed that the happiness of Brahmananda is no more than the water in the impression left by a cow's hoof in the earth, compared to the ocean of bliss found in devotional service. He leaned forward. The fulfillment of service is so comprehensive that devotees never desire to become one with the Supreme. Even if they're offered the 4 kinds of spiritual opulences, such as residence on the Lord's planet or the same bodily features as the Lord, they refuse to accept them. Why would they refuse that? I asked. Because they'd rather serve than be served. They'd rather love than merge. Relationship requires distinction. You can't have a relationship with yourself. The ocean of devotion. There's a beautiful analogy that captures this, my father said. The impersonalists are very fond of merging into the Supreme, like rivers that come down and merge into the ocean. The ocean can be compared to liberation and the rivers to all the different paths of liberation. Okay, I followed. The impersonalists are dwelling in the river water, which eventually comes to mix with the ocean. They have no information, however, of the innumerable aquatic living entities within the ocean. The devotees eternally live in the ocean of devotional service, compared to sharks who dwell in the great ocean of nectar and who don't care for the various rivers of liberation. I smiled at the image. So the impersonalists are swimming toward the ocean, while the devotees are already living in it? Exactly. And here's the key. The spiritual light of Brahman which the impersonalists seek is merely the bodily ray of Krishna. Krishna is the source of the Brahman effulgence. The impersonal feature is not the ultimate end. True spiritual association demands penetrating this effulgence and arriving at the platform of associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The neutral mellow. Now we're ready to explore Santarasa, my father said. The journey into personal relationships begins with this stage of neutrality in devotional service. What does neutral mean in this context? I asked. It sounds cold. It's not cold, it's foundational. This stage is defined as the spiritual condition of one who is actually able to maintain the transcendental position. The devotee situated in this mellow appreciates the transcendental form of the Lord, seeing him as the supreme maintainer. So it's appreciation? I asked. Profound appreciation. The spiritual pleasure derived from association with the Supreme Person is far greater than the pleasure derived from impersonal Brahman realization, because of the direct meeting with the eternal form of the Lord. In Santarasa, the Lord is appreciated as the eternal transcendental form, the chief of all self-realized souls, the Supersoul and the Supreme Brahman. This appreciation is characterized by awe and veneration. Meditation on the personal form. Even those mystics whose goal is initially void meditation or impersonal understanding, my father continued, find benefit in directing their attention to the personal form of the Lord. How so? I asked. For those great sages seeking transcendence, the sources recommend that the beginning should be to take shelter of Lord Vishnu, the four-handed eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They're advised to meditate on this form as opposed to something void, which yields no tangible result. He read from his notes. When great saintly persons who have undergone penances and austerities see the four-handed transcendental form of Vishnu, they become immediately captivated by the beauty of the Lord. This appreciation is an instance of being situated in rasa, or the neutral stage of devotional service. So even if you start trying to meditate on nothing, you're better off meditating on something, on someone? I asked. Yes. When a devotee is situated in this neutral stage, Brahma Buddha, he is liberated from material entanglement and becomes joyous beyond any hankering or lamentation. He appreciates the Lord as being completely peaceful, completely controlled and pure, merciful to the devotees and untouched by any material condition. The sages and the saffron aroma. Let me tell you a story, my father said, settling back. It's about four saintly persons known as the Kumara brothers, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sananda, and Sanak Kumara. They were the sons of Lord Brahma and were always absorbed in the thought of impersonal Brahman. They had no interest in form, personality, or relationship, just pure abstract consciousness. Okay, I said. One day they visited the Lord in Vaikuntha, the spiritual realm. They bowed down before the Lord, and the aroma of the tulsi plant, mixed with saffron, entered their nostrils and immediately attracted their minds. From just a smell? I asked. Just a smell. Due to this encounter with the Lord's personal presence, their internal realization was instantly transformed. The hairs on their bodies immediately stood up, and they turned to become devotees. My father's voice filled with wonder. The Kumaras confessed that the impersonal feature of the absolute truth, known as Brahman, could be very pleasing to a saintly person only so long as one does not happen to see Krishna's eternal form of bliss and knowledge. This proves that while Brahmabuddha realization may satisfy the impersonalists, the transcendental pleasure of association with the Supreme Person is far greater. So they spent their whole lives pursuing the impersonal, and one encounter with the personal changed everything? I asked. One fragrance. That's the power of direct contact with the Divine Person. Impetus for advancement. What does someone in Sanarasa actually do? I asked. What does their practice look like? Santarasa is the indispensable foundation where one is established in Krishna's personal form. This position is attained by a person who is freed from the bodily concept of life and is eligible to enter into devotional service. My father described the symptoms. Such a person is engaged in austerity and study, especially of the Vedas, particularly the Upanishadic portions, and constantly thinks of the eternal form of Krishna. They're characterized by detachment. They're always neutral and have no affection for nor misidentification with anything material. A saintly person may think, when shall I be able to live alone in the caves of the mountains? And when will it be possible for me to think always of the lotus feet of Mukunda? That sounds like renunciation, I observed. It is. But it's renunciation born of attraction to something higher, not rejection of the world. There are also physical manifestations. Such devotees may concentrate their eyesight on the tip of the nose, a sign that they have already realized the eternal form of the Lord within themselves. They may sometimes yawn, stretch their limbs, offer respectful obeisances, and desire to give direct service with their body. They may sometimes fall down on the ground, their hairs stand up, and they tremble all over. So it's not just philosophical, it's embodied, I said. Completely. And here's what's beautiful. When a devotee in this neutral stage comes into contact with external stimuli relating to Krishna, the impetus for deeper, active devotion is aroused. What kind of stimuli? I asked. Smell, like smelling the tulsi offered at the lotus feet of the Lord. Sound, hearing the sound of his conch shell. Association, constantly associating with devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness. My father read an example. When Lord Krishna was blowing his conch shell called Pankajanya, many great sages living in the caves immediately reacted, being awakened from their trance of meditation. If a Brahmin realized devotee who has reached the stage of steady trance comes into contact with the eternal form of Krishna, his transcendental pleasure increases millions of times. So, Santarasa isn't the end, it's the beginning, I said. Exactly. The gateway to active relationships. The crucial significance of Santarasa, my father emphasized, is that it serves as the beginning position of devotional service. Without being situated in this position, being established in Krishna's personal form, no one can advance to actual pure devotional service. Why is that? I asked. Because you have to first appreciate who Krishna is before you can actively serve him. The realization that Krishna is the eternal form, the chief of all self-realized souls, immediately makes one eligible to move beyond mere neutrality to the next step, dasirasa, or actual pure devotional service that begins with active service. So it's like falling in love? I asked. First you notice someone, appreciate them, and then you want to do something for them? That's a perfect analogy. The impersonalists or Brahmanandis who eventually turn to devotional service, like Sukadeva Goswami and Bilvamagala Hakura, are the best examples of devotees situated in the neutral state. My father found a passage and read with evident delight. Bilvamagala Hakura, who was initially initiated into the path of impersonal realization, confessed, "I have now become misled by a naughty boy, who has made me his maidservant. So I have now forgotten the process of Brahman realization." I laughed. He calls Krishna a naughty boy? That's the beauty of it. Once you encounter the person, all your high philosophy becomes irrelevant. You're not interested in abstract realization anymore. You just want to serve this person who has captivated your heart. My father closed his book. This readiness to serve, which follows the steady appreciation of Krishna's greatness, is the foundation of the science of divine love. Santarasa is where you realize the divine is not in it. He is a person. And now that I know he's a person, I want to do something for him. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun move across the valley. I thought about all the years I'd spent teaching meditation